You're sitting there, engine still running, hands slightly tense on the wheel, and the officer hasn't come back yet. It's been a minute, then 2, then 5. You start looking in your mirrors, wondering what's taking so long. Are they writing you a ticket, calling someone, checking something worse? And then a thought creeps in that most drivers never say out loud. What exactly is the officer doing in that car right now? Be honest with me for a second. The last time you were pulled over, how long did the officer stay in their car before coming back to you? And what did you think they were doing during that time? Drop your answer in the comments because most people assume it's something simple. And they couldn't be more wrong. Stick with me, because what's actually happening during those quiet minutes can completely change how you handle a traffic stop from now on. Here's the part nobody explains clearly. That moment when the officer walks back to their patrol car is not a break. It's not downtime. It's not even just paperwork. It's where the real work begins. From your seat, it feels like nothing is happening. From theirs, everything is happening at once. And once you understand what goes on inside that car, you'll start to see why some stops stay routine, while others quietly turn into something much more serious. Let's slow it down and walk through it together. The officer has already made initial observations before they even reached your window. They've seen how you pulled over, how you moved inside the car, how you responded when they spoke to you. Now they return to their vehicle carrying something more valuable than your license and registration. They're carrying information, and information is what builds a case. The first thing that usually happens is verification. Your license isn't just a plastic card, it's a key into a system. When they enter your information, they're not just checking if it's valid. They're looking at your driving history, your status, any restrictions, any flags. Is the license suspended? Are there prior violations? Is there an outstanding warrant? These are not assumptions. These are facts that appear in seconds. And here's something most people underestimate. The tone of the stop can change instantly based on what comes back on that screen. You might have had a calm interaction at the window. Everything felt routine. But if something unexpected appears in that system, the officer now has to shift gears. And that's where drivers get confused. They think, why did this suddenly become serious? They don't realize the seriousness didn't come from what they said. It came from what the system revealed. Now, while that check is happening, something else is taking place at the same time. The officer is writing, not just the ticket if there is one, but notes. Short, sharp observations. Time of stop. Location. Reason for the stop. But more importantly, behavior. Drivers rarely think about this part. But officers are trained to document what they see and what they hear in a way that holds up later. Because a traffic stop doesn't always end on the roadside. Sometimes it continues in a courtroom, and when that happens, memory is not enough. Documentation is everything. So, while you're sitting there thinking the delay means you're about to get a warning or a ticket, the officer may already be building a timeline, a sequence of events, a narrative that explains why the stop happened and what followed. Now, let me tell you something that might make you look at this whole situation differently. That quiet time in the patrol car is also when the officer decides how far to take the stop. Not emotionally, not randomly, but based on what they've seen and what they now know. If everything checks out clean, the process stays simple. If something raises a question, even a small one, they may start thinking one step ahead. Should they ask more questions? Should they observe more closely? Should they extend the stop slightly to clarify something? And here's where drivers unknowingly make things worse. Because during this waiting period, tension builds. You start thinking about what might happen. You replay what you said. You wonder if you should say something else when they return. And that mental pressure leads to a common mistake: over-talking. The officer comes back, and instead of keeping things simple, the driver starts explaining more than necessary, adding details that weren't asked for, trying to clear things up when nothing was actually unclear. And that's where problems begin, because every additional word becomes part of the situation. Not always in a negative way, but every word adds something, and not everything you say helps you. Now, let's go deeper, because this is where most people completely misunderstand how these stops evolve. The officer is not just checking you, they're also checking your vehicle, registration status, ownership details. Is the vehicle registered to you? Is there anything unusual about it? Again, this is not about assuming wrongdoing. It's about removing uncertainty. The more uncertainty exists, the more cautious the officer becomes. and caution changes behavior. Now, imagine this scenario. Your license comes back valid, but the vehicle is registered to someone else. Not a problem by itself. But now there's a question. Why? Is it a family member's car, a friend's, a rental? The officer may ask about it when they return. And here's where things get interesting. If your answer is simple and consistent, the situation stays calm. If your answer is unclear, hesitant, or changes slightly, that small detail becomes something worth paying attention to. Not because it proves anything, but because it introduces doubt. And doubt is something officers are trained to explore carefully. Now, let's talk about time. Because time is something drivers feel very strongly during a stop. A short wait feels manageable. A longer wait feels uncomfortable. An extended wait starts to feel suspicious. But from the officer's perspective, time is part of the process. They are not rushing to get back to you. They are making sure they have everything they need before they continue. And here's the part that most people never consider. Rushing can create mistakes. And mistakes can destroy a case. So even if the stop seems simple, the officer is trained to be thorough, to check everything properly, to document everything correctly. Because if something does escalate later, everything they did during that stop may be examined in detail. Now, I want you to think about how this changes your role in the situation. You're not just waiting. You're still part of the interaction. Your behavior during this time still matters. Are you staying still? Are your hands visible? Are you calm? Or are you turning around, moving, reaching, checking your phone repeatedly? Remember what we talked about earlier. Observation never stops. Even from inside the patrol car, the officer can still see you. And what you do during this time can either reinforce the calm tone of the stop or slowly introduce uncertainty. Now, let me give you a scenario that happens more often than people realize. A driver gets pulled over. Everything seems normal. The officer goes back to the car. While waiting, the driver starts searching through the glove compartment again, checking their phone, adjusting items in the car. From the driver's perspective, they're just passing time. From the officer's perspective, those movements are new information, new behavior that didn't happen earlier, and that shift matters. Because consistency builds trust. Inconsistency raises questions. Now here's where things start to connect in a way most drivers never see. The initial scan we talked about earlier, the behavior at the window, the checks inside the patrol car, the observations during the wait. All of these pieces come together into a single picture, and that picture determines how the stop ends. Not just the violation itself, but the overall interaction, whether it stays routine or becomes something more, whether it ends quickly or stretches longer, whether it remains simple or becomes complicated. Now, I want to challenge a belief that a lot of people hold. Many drivers think the officer already decided everything the moment they walked up, that the outcome is fixed, that nothing they do matters after that point. That's not entirely true. Decisions evolve, they develop as more information comes in, and that quiet time in the patrol car is when a lot of that development happens. So instead of thinking it's already decided, it's more accurate to think it's still being shaped. And that means your actions still matter, even in silence, even while waiting, because the stop is not paused, it's progressing in a different way. Now here's something subtle, but important. When the officer finally steps out of their car again, their approach often tells you something. Not everything, but something. Are they walking calmly? Are they more focused? Do they go straight to your window, or do they pause slightly? These small details can reflect what they've learned, not in an obvious way, but in a subtle shift of energy. And if you pay attention, you can feel that shift. Now, this doesn't mean you try to analyze every movement. It means you stay steady, consistent, predictable, because the worst thing you can do at that point is suddenly change your behavior. Now, before we wrap this up, let me leave you with something practical. The next time you're pulled over, don't just think about what you're going to say. Think about what's happening while nothing is being said. That space, that quiet moment, that waiting period, that's not empty time. That's the moment where the officer is putting the pieces together. And whether you realize it or not, you're part of those pieces. So instead of letting that silence make you anxious, use it. Stay calm, stay still, stay consistent. Because while you're waiting for them to come back, they're deciding what happens next.